So this is one of the early concept illustrations for the book that I'm working on that I've codenamed Terikiak. A lot of things have changed about this story since I did this initial sketch years ago, but some things are still intact. And so a couple of things that haven't changed, there's still this velociraptor named Rebecca. My kids came up with that and named her. There's still a giant talking frog. Although, as you can see in this rough sketch, one of the boys, Alexander, is kind of carrying the frog there in his arms, kind of like a baby. And the frog-like character really has kind of changed and has become a lot more intelligent since these early concepts and doesn't need to be carried around like that. But I still think it's kind of fun to see. And probably the biggest thing that's changed is back when I first came up with this concept, it was a story about two brothers, and now it's actually about three brothers. Arthur, the older brother on the right, Alexander, the one with the sword now, that spear just turned into a sword, and then the littlest brother, Gus or Augustus. And you can see as you're watching this, some things have already changed. The spear turned into a sword. What used to be a frog is now a stuffed fox in Alexander's arms, and now the frog is perched very majestically on the back of Rebecca, the velociraptor. And so you can see I'm already kind of changing things as I've been sketching, as I've been developing the story. And so as with all of these illustrations for Terikiak, they're all done in the iPad Pro application Procreate with an Apple Pencil. And even though a lot of times they're very sketchy and very kind of loose, I still end up using lots of different layers to do different details, different shading effects or coloring. And so you'll see even in this sketch, there's several different layers kind of going on, especially in case I make a mistake, it's a lot easier to fix. You can see I was kind of experimenting with different lettering styles there for Terikiak. One thing you notice early on in this sketch is instead of saying Terikiak, it said Jonah's Island up there in faded red, which that was kind of the early tentative name for this story after my son Jonah. You can see the frog is getting some detail there, including a kind of a cowboy hat or something like that. He does have a hat in the later versions, but it's more of a really wide brim kind of medieval hat. He also has a staff and kind of a robe. So, but it's still fun to kind of see, how things have changed over the last few years. One thing that hasn't changed is this kind of ominous volcano in the background of the island. That's a central part of the story. I don't want to give too much away, but there's kind of a mystery that's associated with this lone volcano on the island that the boys kind of need to solve by the end of the book. And one thing that has changed too is, at least so far in the story, none of the boys have a pirate pistol like that. You see Arthur's character with a pirate pistol tucked into his belt, although that sounds kind of fun. That's not really in the book right now. One thing that's important to the story as well is you see the shark fin in the foreground. There's definitely a lot of sharks, although the sharks have changed shape since that time. They're now what we call spikeback sharks, sharks covered in these horrible spikes. Here I'm playing around with bringing some color into the piece, again in a different layer. And although a lot of the chapter illustrations of the book stay black and white, it's really fun to think about what colors things will be. This is kind of, just experimenting for myself. Obviously, I'm pulling a lot of inspiration from a lot of different things. One of the things that I'm pulling from is the French comic Tintin, the kind of like highly detailed yet kind of cartoony style. is a lot of fun to be inspired by, and I read a lot of Tintin when I was a kid, and here I'm kind of adding some shadow, some dramatic shadow and lighting to the piece. I really like how that kind of turned out.